America's Secret Establishment, An Introduction to the Order of Skull and Bones by Antony Sutton. Memorandum Number 3. How much is known about the Order? The openly published literature on the Order amounts to merely 2 articles over a span of 100 years. The Iconoclast, Volume 1, Number 1 only, published October 13, 1873, and an already cited article in Esquire by Ron Rosenbaum, published in 1977. This book and its successors are based on a published archival material originating with the Order. The Iconoclast, October 1873. Back in October 1873, an enterprising Yale student, stung to action because the Order had taken over Yale finances and left the university near poverty, took it upon himself to publish an exposé. Unfortunately, some of the anonymous student's acutest observations were buried in not-so-good verse. We will reprint some of the verse below as in the original Iconoclast because it's impossible to summarize. The Yale College newspapers, Current and Record, had a blackout policy on the Order. As Iconoclast puts it, "We speak through a new publication because the college press is closed to those who dare to openly mention bones." The college press was controlled by the Order. From time to time, Yale newspapers were run by editors in the Order. For example, one noteworthy editor of the Yale Record, also in the Order, was Thomas Cochrane, 94, who went on to make a career as an influential partner in the influential banking firm of J.P. Morgan. 3 paragraphs in this anonymous publication summarize the Iconoclast accusation. First, that there is a Yale secret society open only to a select few. We quote, "For more than 40 years, a secret society called Skull and Bones has existed in Yale College. It receives a certain number of men from each class. These are chosen nominally by the members of the class. Although it is understood that a prominent man's influence avails for his friends and relatives through several years after his graduation. By observing the men elected from year to year, we find that they are chosen with a distinct end in view, namely, that of obtaining for the society the most honours. Some of these honours are given to literary, some to wealthy men. This, then, is the case. Men receive marks of distinction from Yale College or from their entire class, because of which they are taken into the secret society. Since Yale honours men, this fraternity professes to honour them also." Secondly, the Iconoclast states that the Order has obtained control of Yale, and its members care more for their society than for Yale itself. Out of every class, Skull and Bones takes its men. They have gone out into the world and have become, in many instances, leaders in society. They have obtained control of Yale. Its business is performed by them. Money paid to the college must pass into their hands and be subject to their will. No doubt they are worthy men in themselves, but the many whom they looked down upon while in college cannot so far forget as to give money freely into their hands. Men in Wall Street complain that the college comes straight to them for help, instead of asking each graduate for a share. The reason is found in a remark made by one of Yale's and America's first men. "Few will give but Bones men, and they care far more for their society than they do for the college." Finally, the Iconoclast calls the Order a deadly evil growing year by year, saying, "Year by year the deadly evil is growing. The society was never as obnoxious to the college as it is today. and it is just this ill feeling that shuts the pockets of non-members. Never before has it shown such arrogance and self-fancied superiority. It grasps the college press and endeavours to rule it all. It does not deign to show its credentials, but clutches at power with the silence of conscious guilt. To tell the good which Yale College has done would be well nigh impossible. To tell the good she might do would be yet more difficult. The question then is reduced to this. On the one hand lies a source of incalculable good. On the other, a society guilty of serious and far-reaching crimes. It is Yale College against Skull and Bones. We ask all men, as a question of right, which should be allowed to live. The power of the order is put to use on behalf of its members even before they leave Yale. Here's a case from the late 19th century which predates the cases we will present later and suggests how long immoral use of power has prevailed within the order. The favouritism shown to Bones men. Are not we coming to a sad state when open injustice can be done by the faculty, and when the fact that a man is a member of Skull and Bones can prejudice them in his favour? Briefly, the case which calls forth the question is this. 2 members of the senior class, the one being a neutral, the other a Bones man, returned at the beginning of the college year laden with several conditions, some of which, upon examination, they failed to pass. Up to this point, the cases were parallel, and the leniency, if there was to be leniency, should have been shown to the neutral, who has done all that lay in his power to further the interests of the college, rather than to the Bones man, who has, during his 3 years at Yale, accomplished nothing that we know of. But, strange to say, the former has been suspended until the end of term and obliged to leave town, not being permitted to pass another examination until he returns. The Bones man, on the contrary, is allowed to remain in New Haven, attends recitation daily, is called upon to recite, and will have a second examination in less than 6 weeks. Why is this distinction made? Oh, Mr. So-and-so's is a special case, said a professor. A Bones man? The specialty, we presume, being the fact that Mr. So-and-so wears a death's head and crossbones upon his bosom. We understand that Mr. So-and-so claims to have been ill during vacation and offers the illness as an excuse for not passing the examination. But the neutral gentleman was also ill, as the faculty were expressly informed in a letter from his father. The circumstance has caused a very lively indignation throughout the senior class. It is certainly time for a radical reform when the gentlemen who superintend our destinies and who should be just if nothing else can allow themselves to be influenced by so petty a thing as society connections. And here is an extract from the bad verse Antony Sutton speaks of, and it's addressed to whom it may concern. We come before the college now, on justice's side arrayed, to claim redress for open wrongs that vandal hands have made. To give a college sentiment expression bold and free, asserting each man's native right, if such a thing there be. We represent no clique or clan, but honest men and true, who never will submit to that which 15 men may do, who feel the shameful yoke that long has on the college lain, and who propose to do their best to break that yoke in twain. We are not soreheads. God forbid that we should cherish strong desires to be identified with principles that long have been a blight upon the life and politics of Yale, before whose unjust aims the glow of Boss Tweed's brass would pale. We represent the neutral man whose voices must be heard, and never can be silenced by a haughty look or word. Of those whose influence here at Yale would be but void and null, did they not wear upon their breasts 2 crossed bones and a skull. We hold no grudge against any man, but wish that all may be united by the common bond of peace and harmony. Yet when a few do to themselves most proudly aggregate the running of affairs, there can be no such happy state. What right, forsooth, have 15 men to lord it over all? What right to say the college world shall on their faces fall? When they approach, have they indeed to sickly greatness grown, and must each one with servile speech them his superiors own? If they have grounds on which they base their claim as just and true, we challenge them to set them forth exposed to public view, that all may know the reasons why this oligarchy proud elect themselves as lords supreme, or us, the vulgar crowd. We offer no objections to their existing clan. No one disputes with them this right, we question but the plan on which they act, that only he who wears upon his breast their emblem, he for every post shall be considered best. We wish this understood by all, yet not let none who read this say that we are moved by petty wrongs or private spite obey. It is for principles of right that we with them contend, for principles which they've ignored but which we here defend. O fellow students, who with us revere these classic halls, O ye across whose pathway bright their sacred glory falls, ye men of every class who feel our alma mater's care, shall college life beneath these elms this loathsome aspect wear? Shall none assert the right to act as to each seemeth best, but cringe and fawn to him who wears a death's head on his breast? Nay, let all rise and break the spell whose sickly glamour falls about all that originates within those brownstone walls. And if they will not hear our claims or grant the justice due, but still persist in tarnishing the glory of the blue, ruling this little college world with proud imperious tones, be then the watchword of our ranks, down, down with skull and bones. And this is the second article Antony Sutton refers to, and printed in Squire magazine in September 1977. Only one article is known to have been published within the last 100 years on the order. Unfortunately, it is a superficial, almost mocking review, and provides some enlightenment but little contribution to historical knowledge. The article is The Last Secrets of Skull and Bones by Ron Rosenbaum, printed in Squire in 1977. Rosenbaum is a Yale graduate attracted by the fictional possibilities of a secret society out to control the world. He is apparently not aware of the political implications. The contribution is a blend of known authentic documents and outright hearsay. On the one hand, Rosenbaum does make some notable observations. Among these are: the people who have shaped America's national character since it ceased being an undergraduate power had their undergraduate character shaped in the crypt over there, that is, the temple on the Yale campus. Another comment, when a new member is initiated into the order: tonight he will die to the world, and be born again into the order as he will thenceforth refer to it. The order is a world unto itself, in which he will have a new name and 40 new blood brothers, also with new names. And when Rosenbaum starts to inquire about the order, he's told they don't like people tampering and prying. The power of bones is incredible. They've got their hands on every lever of power in the country. You'll see, it's like trying to look into the mafia. Remember, they're a secret society too. The Esquire piece is well worth reading. It gives a side of the order that doesn't concern us too much. The address books. As the order is a secret society, it does not publish minutes or journals as Rosenbaum suggests. They don't like people tampering and prying. This author does, however, possess copies of the addressees' books, which used to be called catalogues. These are the membership lists all the way back to 1832, the founding date in the United States. How did this material make its way into outside hands? It is possible that one or more members, although bound by oath, would not be dismayed if the story became public knowledge. That's all we will say. Other material exists. Skull and Bones is always a lively topic for Yale conversation. Some time back, a few practical-minded students made their own investigation. They did a break-in job, a Yale gate. A small hoard of Bones mementos, a layout diagram, and considerable embarrassment resulted. The core of the research for this book is the addresses books. With these we can reconstruct a picture of motives, objectives, and operations. The actions of individual members are already recorded in open history and archives. By determining when members enter a scene, what they did, what they argued, who they appointed, and when they faded out, we can assemble patterns and deduce objectives. Memorandum number 4. Who is in this secret society? The membership list of about 2,500 initiates into the order has very obvious features. Most members are from the eastern seaboard United States. As late as 1950, only 3 members resided in Los Angeles, California, but 28 members resided in New Haven, Connecticut. Members are all male and almost all WASPs, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. In great part, they descended from English Puritan families. Their ancestors arrived in North America in the 1630 to 1660 period. These Puritan families either intermarried with financial power or invited in sons of money moguls, e.g. the Rockefellers, Davisons, and Harrimans, whose sons became members of the order. From this preliminary information we can derive Hypothesis 1. There exists in the United States today, and has existed since 1833, a secret society comprising members of old-line American families and representatives of financial power. The chart on page 19 presents a simplified layout of this hypothesis. Full information remains for a later book. For now, we'll give details of just 2 key families, the Whitneys and the Harrimans. The Whitney family, a key family, descended from English Puritans who came to the US about 1635 and settled in Watertown, Massachusetts. 8 Whitneys have been members of the order. Of these, 3 had brief lives. Emerson Cogswell Whitney died a few months after initiation, and Edward Payson Whitney disappeared in 1858, according to his biographer. However, 3 Whitneys, William Collins Whitney and his 2 sons, are the core of Whitney influence in the order, which survives today through the Harriman family and intermarriage with Paynes and Vanderbilts. And then there's a name of Whitneys in the order. 1851, Emerson Cogswell Whitney, died December 1851. 1854, Edward Payson Whitney, medicine, disappeared 4 years later. 1856, James Lyman Whitney, worked in Boston Public Library. 1863, William Collins Whitney, Secretary of the Navy, promoter and financier. 1878, Edward Baldwin Whitney, Justice, New York Supreme Court. 1882, Joseph Ernest Whitney, died in 1893. 1894, Payne Whitney, Finance, Knickerbocker Trust Company. And 1898, Harry Payne Whitney, Finance, Guaranty Trust and Guggenheim Exploration Company. So the hypothesis number 1, a secret society dominated by old-line American families and new wealth has existed from 1833 to the present day. And there's a chart here with the order at the centre and some of these families raying out in spokes. The families include Whitney, Perkins, Stimson, Taft, Wadsworth, Gilman, Payne, Davison, Pillsbury, Sloan, Weyerhaeuser, Harriman, Rockefeller, Lord, Bundy, and Phelps. William Collins Whitney, 1841 to 1904, is a fine example of how members of the order rise to fame and fortune. W.C. Whitney was enlisted in 1863 and by 1872 had only advanced his career to inspector of schools for New York. However, in the last 3 decades of the century, he rolled up a massive fortune, became a power behind the throne in the Cleveland administration, and directed the often unscrupulous activities of a cluster of capitalists known as the Whitney Group. A brief quotation suggests the power that Whitney amassed in a brief 30 years. This is a list of Whitney estates at the turn of the century. A city residence in New York, a Venetian palace and 5,000 acres in Wheatley Hills near Jamaica, a Sheepshead Bay house with a private track covering 300 acres, a mansion at Berkshire Hills, Massachusetts, with 700 acres of land, October Mountain House with a large tract of land, Stonyford Farm, New York, used as an auxiliary to his Kentucky stock farm, an Adrian Dack Game Preserve of 16,000 acres, a lodge at Blue Mountain Lake with a fine golf course, a bluegrass farm of 3,000 acres in Kentucky, an estate at Aiken, SC, comprising a mansion, racecourse, and 2,000 acres of hunting land. William C. Whitney married Flora Payne, daughter of Standard Oil treasurer Oliver Payne. The Paynes are not in the order, but adding the Payne piece of the Standard Oil fortune made Whitney's fortune that much larger. Their 2 sons, Harry Payne and Payne Whitney, went to Yale and became members of the order. After Yale, Harry Payne promptly married Gertrude Vanderbilt in 1896, and so the Whitney-Payne fortune now joined some Vanderbilt money. This financial power was channeled into Guaranty Trust, the J.P. Morgan and Guggenheim outfits. And it gets more complicated. For example, the son of Harry Payne Whitney, Cornelius Vanderbilt Whitney, married Marie Norton. After their divorce, Marie Norton Whitney married W. Averell Harriman, who is today at 91 a key member. It is these tightly woven family and financial interlocks that make up the core of the order. So let's take a look at the Harriman family. In the first few days of June 1983, a prominent American, a private citizen, flew to Moscow for a confidential chat with Yuri Andropov. A State Department interpreter went along. This American was not the president, nor the vice president, nor the Secretary of State, nor any member of the Reagan administration. It was a private individual, W. Averell Harriman. The first time any American had talked with Yuri Andropov since the death of his predecessor, Brezhnev. So who is W. Averell Harriman? The elder Harriman, a prominent and not too scrupulous railroad magnate, sent both his sons to Yale. William Averell Harriman and Edward Rowland Noel Harriman joined the order. A good example of how old line families in the order absorbed new wealth families, although as history has unfolded, it may be that Harriman and his fellow investment bankers have dominated the direction of the order in the past few decades. In the 1930s, W.A. Harriman and Company merged with Brown Brothers. This was an older financial house whose partners were also members of the order. Alexander Brown was founded in 1800 in New York and Philadelphia. By the 1970s, the relatively unknown private international banking firm of Brown Brothers Harriman, with assets of about $1.5 billion, had taken in so many of the Brotherhood that out of 26 individual partners, no fewer than 9 were members of the order. We don't know of any greater concentration of members. And to make it more interesting, Prescott Bush, father of President George H.W. Bush, both in the order, was a partner in Brown Brothers Harriman for over 40 years. Finally, because Brown Brothers Harriman is a private banking firm, it has relatively no government supervision and does not publish an annual report. In other words, we know nothing about its operations. At least we know nothing from Brown Brothers and Harriman sources. Here's a lineup of Brown Brothers Harriman partners who were also members of the order in the mid-1970s. Walter H. Brown, initiated 1945. Prescott Sheldon Bush, 1917. Granger Kent Costakian, 1929. Edward Rowland Noel Harriman, 1917. W. Averell Harriman, 1913. Stephen Young Lord, 1921. Robert Abercrombie Lovett, 1918. John Beckwith Maiden, 1941. And Knight Woolley, 1917. It's worth thinking about this concentration of names and the power it represents in the light of outside comments on the order over the years. After the title page of this volume, we reprint the verse of an anonymous Yale student of the 1870s. He commented on the requirement to put the order ahead of all else. The editor of the Iconoclast, also in the 1870s, wrote, "And on their breasts they wear a sign that tells their race and name. It is the ghastly badge of death, and from his kingdom came the son of Satan, son of sin, the enemy of man." Another writer in the 1870s called the order the Brotherhood of Death. Outside already, in the doubtful dawn, thither from this side and from that, slow sweep, and settle down in silence solidly, crow-wise, the frightful Brotherhood of Death. Black-hatted and black-hooded huddle they, with black cravats a-dangling from each neck. So take thee their grim station at the door, torches lit, skull and crossbones banner spread. Ron Rosenbaum, in his 1977 Esquire article a century later, was no less caustic. Rosenbaum called it a mafia. From evidence to be presented later, this author would term the order an international mafia, unregulated and all but unknown. To the outside world, however, it's merely Brown Brothers Harriman, 59 Wall Street, New York. But obviously, Yuri Andropov over in Moscow knows who holds the cards. The British connection. Some well-read readers may raise a question. How does the order and its families relate to Cecil Rhodes's secret society, Milner's Round Table, the Illuminati, and the Jewish secret society equivalents? How do these fit into the picture? We are concerned here only with the core of a purely American phenomenon with German origin. It is undoubtedly linked to overseas groups. The links between the order and Britain go through Lazard Frere and the private merchant bankers. Notably, the British establishment was also founded at a university, Oxford University, and especially All Souls College at Oxford. The British element is called the Group. The Group links to the Jewish equivalent through the Rothschilds in Britain. Lord Rothschild was an original member of Rhodes' Inner Circle. The order in the US links to the Guggenheim, Schiff and Warburg families. There were no Jews at all in the order until very recently. In fact, the order has, as Rosenbaum suggests, some definite anti-Semitic tendencies. Token Jews and token blacks have been admitted in recent years. there is an Illuminati connection. Some details are in the Esquire article. More details will be in our future volumes. All these groups have cooperative and competitive features. But to argue that all the world's ills can be ascribed to any one of these groups is false. The core of the order, like the core of the group in England, comprises about 20 families. In the US case, they are mostly descendants from the original settlers in Massachusetts. New wealth did not enter the order until the mid-19th century, and until recently has never dominated the order. On the other hand, key families, the Whitneys and the Harrimans, are linked to their own banking interests. In many ways, these old-line Yankee families have outsmarted the bankers. The Puritans diverted bankers' wealth to their own objectives without always absorbing the banker families. The order controls the substantial wealth of Andrew Carnegie, but no Carnegie has ever been a member of the order. The order used the Ford wealth so flagrantly against the wishes of the Ford family that 2 Fords resigned from the board of the Ford Foundation. No Ford has been a member of the order. The name Morgan has never appeared on the membership lists, although some Morgan partners are with the inner core, for example, Davison and Perkins. Interestingly, the Astor name is prominent in the group in England, but not in the order in the US. Memorandum number 5. Which organisations has it penetrated? The order has either set up or penetrated just about every significant research, policy and opinion-making organisation in the United States. In addition to the church, business, law, government and politics. Not all at the same time, but persistently and consistently enough to dominate the direction of American society. The evolution of American society is not, and has not been for a century, a voluntary development reflecting individual opinion, ideas and decisions at the grassroots. On the contrary, the broad direction has been created artificially and stimulated by the order. Not all organisations know they have been penetrated or used for another purpose. It's a situation very much as Carroll Quigley found in the group. There is an inner core of intimate associates who unquestionably knew that they were members of a group devoted to a common purpose, and an outward circle of a larger number on whom the inner circle acted by personal persuasion, patronage distribution, and social pressure. It is probable that most members of the outer circle were not conscious that they were being used by a secret society. Therefore, our hypothesis number 2 is: the order has penetrated or been the dominant influence in sufficient policy, research, and opinion-making organisations that it determines the basic direction of American society. And there's another wheel with the order at the centre, and on the spokes we have the White House Executive Branch, law, education, media, publishing, business, industry, commerce, churches, banking, Federal Reserve System, foundations, think tanks and policy groups, legislatures and political parties.